Good afternoon and welcome to World Wide Ministries. Today we're going to be coming from the division, the engrafted word, where we look at the Bible from Genesis to Revelations. And we're going to be discussing the importance of rising early. We're going to look at great men in the Bible who rose early, their characteristics, and we're going to believe God that we can all rise early with the help of the Lord, and we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, right? And I've been rising early since I can remember, and I know you can too. We're going to look at Genesis 22, verse 3. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took two of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went into the place which God had told him. So look at here. Abraham rose early and he did exactly as God commanded. And he took two of his men, which could have been his servants, because Abraham was a rich man. He had 318 servants, and we're going to look at that a little bit later. Another thing that Abraham is known for is faith. When God told him that he and his wife were going to conceive, he believed it immediately, and God counted it as righteousness. And Abraham also is known, and Abraham was old. He was 100, I believe, and his wife was 90. And they both ended up conceiving a baby, and I'm sure God gave them great joy. We know that from the Word of God. Abraham's also known for obedience. It's better to obey than to sacrifice. Abraham took his son Isaac, and he took him to offer him as a sacrifice as God had instructed him during a test. And Abraham came out on top. When he laid him up there was a ram in the bush. So we all know about that. Another thing Abraham is getting back to is I believe he was very brave and courageous, great man of God, like most great men of God are. He took his 318 servants and rescued his nephew Lot from Sodom and Gomorrah. So Abraham's known for a lot of great things. The next great man in the Bible we're going to look at is Moses in the book of Exodus. So we're going to go to Exodus 34, verse 4. And he hewed 2 tablets of stone like unto the first. And Moses rose up early in the morning and went up into Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. So here it is, Moses as well as Abraham. He's getting up early to do the work of the Lord. He's getting the 2 tablets, which are the 10 commandments, and he's obeying God. Moses, as you know, is a great leader. He was one of the only man that I know of in the Bible who was able to see the backside of God. He asked to see God, and God blessed him to see him, and he was not allowed to see his face, because as God told him, anybody who sees his face would die. You just can't make it. But also Moses is known for delivering the people from Egypt. He led them out of the land from Pharaoh. The Hebrews had been enslaved for 400 years, and Moses went in and he got all the people out. It was 600,000 men. I could not find how many women and children. Back then women and children were not always counted, so I have read. But anyway, Moses was a great man. He lived with his father-in-law Jethro, and he just did great things. He saw the angel of the Lord in the burning bush. God really favored him, and you can see why. He defended God's people. I'm not telling anybody to go out murdering one, but he murdered. I'm sure he repented, and he went and fled the land, but they were picking on the Israelites when they were slaves, and he at the time was living in Pharaoh as Pharaoh's son, in a way, because his sister had found Moses on the water and had took him in, and they had raised him, and then I think he started to miss or feel like he was a Hebrew inside, and I'm sure that he felt for the Hebrew people when he murdered the man who coming against the Hebrew. The next great man that we're going to look at is Joshua. And that's in the book of Joshua. And it's going to be Joshua 3:1. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. So here God has put Joshua in charge after Moses died of the people. And Joshua is doing like Moses, like Abraham, like all the great men in the Bible, as we are iterating on. He rose up early. The next person that we're going to look up is David, Psalms 5:3. Okay. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee and will look up. So now we know David is a man after God's own heart. And what is he doing in the morning? He's directing his prayer to God. We're going to look at the qualifications of being a good disciple. And one of them, which I just got to tell you right now, is seeking God and getting up early in the morning, directing that prayer up to God. And we're going to look into some other aspects of being a good disciple. The next what we're going to look at is Joshua 6:15. And it came to pass on the seventh day that they rose early about the dawning of the day, and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. Okay, and it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priest blew with the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. Okay, so they rose up early, and they walked around the city 7 times, and as you see, God gave them the whole city because of this. And also, what I think of some of the most important things in this passage is to shout. God likes that joyful shout, that joyful noise. And blowing the trumpet. All of these things are what we do, or what they did do before battle, for the Lord, that is. Okay, next we're going to look at 1 Samuel. We're going to look at David again. I apologize for skipping around. 1 Samuel's. And we're going to go to 11. Verse 20. That might be 17. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Let me see. 17 verse 20. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight, and shouted for the battle. So once again, there's that shout. There's that rising up early. Certain characteristics and qualifications that these great men of God have when God is using them and when they're working for the Lord. Okay. Next, we're going to look at Jesus in Mark 1 verse 35. Mark 1 verse 35. Now, as you know, Jesus is our perfect example because Jesus is the Son of God. And Jesus is God incarnate. That means that he's God in the flesh. So is God coming down from heaven in the flesh, the Son of God, who is our creator, and he's walking among man. He's delivering people, he's casting out demons, setting people free, he's healing the sick, the blind, you name it. There's so many miracles that they said it can't even be contained in this book that he did. So glory to God. So now let's look. In Jesus, Mark 1:35, and in the morning rising up a great while before day. So it's just, I'm not saying anything wrong about the other one. So he rose early, but it was a great while. It's emphasized here in the passage before day. He went out and departed into a solitary place. So he really got alone with God. And he got up early, I'm sure earlier before everybody else could get up staring and stuff. Sometimes you have to get up early like that when there's nobody around and really get alone with God, and you can really hear from God. And there prayed. Okay, so like once again, Jesus is our perfect example. We're gonna look also at the Proverbs woman in Proverbs 31. As you know, Proverbs is right after the book of Psalms. Okay. Proverbs, chapter 31. And it's known for being the last chapter in Proverbs. And it's talking about the virtuous woman and her qualifications. We're going to look at a few of her qualifications. It talks about how who can find a virtuous woman, for her price is far above rubies. That's verse 10. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he can have no need of spoil. So here's a man, he doesn't have to worry about his wife, that she's tipping around or doing something she shouldn't be doing. She's virtuous, okay? She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hand. She is like the merchant ship. She bringeth her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night. So it's still night, and she's up really early, and giveth meat to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field and buyeth it. So she has saved her money and she's buying a field. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. So she's out in her garden and everything. This is some woman. Okay. She strengtheneth her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. Okay. So anyway, if you read this passage, and I hope you do, it just talks about the qualifications of the virtuous woman. A lot of people say the Proverbs 31 woman. Okay, and one of her qualifications, she's up early, and while it's still dark out, she's out she has control of her household. She's well favored with her husband. He can trust her. She's got all the qualifications. Okay. Now, one of the things that in order to be a disciple, to follow Jesus, besides getting up early, first we're going to look at what is a disciple? A disciple is a personal follower of Jesus, a follower or student of a teacher